This episode is brought to you by Movement Chiropractic Memorial, Houston's best family and injury chiropractic care center. The team at Movement Chiropractic is dedicated to enhancing your well being through personalized chiropractic care. They offer care using industry leading modalities like shockwave therapy, cold laser therapy, and spinal decompression. Dr. Teagle, who is also an avid Brazilian Jiu Jitsu practitioner, will be there to help you with any nagging injuries that may occur on or off the mat. So, if you're struggling with nagging injuries or have an active lifestyle that requires maintenance, head on over to Movement Chiropractic Memorial and use code MINDSET to receive 25% off your first visit when you call or book online. Movement Chiropractic, united by movement. That's MVMTchiro.com. Or you can call 832-391-8077. Again, Movement Chiropractic Memorial, use code MINDSET for 25% off.
Hey, as we get back into society, let's remember, people will punch you in the fucking mouth.
Welcome back to the Mat Mindset. I have a very special guest on today, one of Houston's newest black belts, combat jiu-jitsu veteran, Houston MMA veteran, the Texas Zombie, Cody Owens. Cody, thank you for joining me today.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
So, I'd like to start off with some background info. How'd you get started in MMA and start fighting and all that?
So it started, I guess we'll go way back to high school. Started off, I wrestled 1 year. I didn't really have the grades to give me the eligibility to be able to wrestle in all the meets, but I was kind of a practice room warrior, I guess you could say. Learned a lot of good lessons there and learned that there were weight classes in combat sports. So that was really cool coming from a football background, right? Obviously, my frame isn't the largest. I realized that once I got to high school. So wrestling coach Kenny Rucker at Klein Collins, hit me in the hallway and said, hey, why don't you try wrestling out? So I went to practice and saw a friend of mine ragdolling dudes in there, and I was like, oh, okay, you can do this to people? And the weight classes was appealing, so I gave that a shot, and I had, kind of an itch for the combat sports. I'd kind of grown up fighting, older brother, things like that, so I knew I had a little bit of that in me already. And then a friend of mine, Justin Castillo, he's a brown belt at Torres. I gave him all the credit in the world for kind of getting me started on that. We were part of the same group of friends, a few older people kind of in my friends group. And we used to party and drink and, that kind of thing. But he had always trained. He'd go offshore, he would come back, and he would always train. And he kept hounding me and telling me, hey, man, you should really try this jiu-jitsu out. If you like wrestling, you probably would like jiu-jitsu. And he mentioned Cameron Graves, who was a green belt at the time, right? This is how far back we go. Yeah. He's been a black belt for years now, right? So I go, same thing. I decide finally, he yanks me, throws me in the truck, says, come on, you're going to go train. So I go in there and, do the trial, check the class out, and I was a wrestler and used to going belly down because you don't want to go to your back as a wrestler. You get pinned that way. So I was always going belly down, and I go through my trial class. I'm not sure if you remember who Cora Seck is. They used to call her the Triangle Queen. She was kind of a little child phenom, teenage prodigy growing up, and she was at Travis's at the time. And I got to, roll around with her as a good example of how effective jiu-jitsu is, right? Yeah. And, I'm this, athletic wrestler, 19-year-old guy, and I'm trying to muscle my way around and huff and puff, and she's ended up just on my back, strangling me, triangle. And I remember after that thinking, man, whatever she knows, I have got to learn. She's got magic or whatever she knows is some sort of secret power. So that was kind of the jump start for me. I was on and off for a while until when I finally decided that I was going to fight. I got serious about getting back into jiu-jitsu. Probably 3 or 4 years later, when I was like 22, I got into the mix with Jace Petrie, is where I met him. There was the spring location of Team Took, which was the Jace Petrie MMA. And I was living at the time at a house right across the street from the gym. So it was convenience that led me to go and train there, which was the beginning of the whole MMA journey. He was an active MMA fighter. Jace was an active MMA fighter at the time, and he was kind of building a little MMA team and building fight camps. And I never really had the thought process of intentionally wanting to fight MMA. It was always something I'd watched and thought was really cool and knew I kind of had a knack for fighting just from growing up, bad neighborhoods, fighting, things like that. So I knew I kind of had a knack for it. But Jace one day just kind of, we had a sparring day, and he asked me afterwards, "Hey man, you ever think of fighting MMA?" I was like, "No, I never really thought about it, never really considered, but I'd be willing to at least give it a shot." He said, "We'll train you for about a year, try to see if we can get you ready for an MMA fight." And I think it was like 8 months after that, 9 months after that, I had my first MMA fight, like 2 or 3 weeks before I got married. Yeah.
I'm sure Courtney loved that.
Oh yeah. She said, "Whatever you do, just don't get a black eye."
Yeah.
Yep.
Did you?
No, I triangled the guy in like minute and 28 seconds. So
Oh,
that was
perfect.
good to go.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. I remember Levi, a guy named Levi West?
Levi Two Fly West.
Yeah.
Yes, I sure do.
He was the one that got me into everything because we were at Tom McCusker's, like when he first started
Right.
teaching jiu-jitsu. Levi was like, "Hey, come do jiu-jitsu, man." And I was like, I don't want to do that. I'm already boxing, just doing Muay Thai. Like,
Right.
I'm good. He was like, just do it one time. I was like, all right. And as soon as I did it once, he's like, "Bro, you should fight." I was like, what do you mean? You just pieced me up in the ring.
But hey,
He's
come on,
like,
give it a
"Fuck
shot." Yeah.
do it, man.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right. And then it snowballed from there. So you went undefeated as an amateur, and then you went undefeated as a pro in MMA. Let's talk about how close do you think you were to getting
Honestly,
to the big show?
I fought. I had 3 pro fights. I had 6 amateur fights. I amassed 3 titles as an amateur and decided to take the leap. Gave all my belts away, vacated all my belts, and decided to train for another solid year to solidify my skill set and feel confident as a pro. I had 2, I would say, like a really good test. My first pro fight was Adonis Saucedo, and he was a real tough scrapper. He was real tough. Had kind of an upside down record at the time, but for a debut fight for me, that there was no real way to tell the caliber of a professional fighter I was at that time. But that was a challenging test for me. I had going to the second round to get the job done, so that was new. Having to explore longer rounds and get into the second round, that was an experience there. The second fight I had as a pro, I had like 8 opponent switches, and oftentimes it can happen in a fight game. I mean, everyone who fights knows that there are potentially going to be some opponent switches, and I had a little bit riding on that. I had a trip planned for after we were going to go travel to Colorado, and we had all these things kind of in place. And my intention was to kind of use a little bit of that from the fight as a little pocket money, a little spending money while we're out on vacation. So I really wanted to have that fight. I really wanted to make sure I could get to the fight. And I ended up getting an opponent that may not have been the caliber that I probably should have had for a second pro fight. But, all credit to the guy. He stepped up and gave me the opportunity to fight and got that job done. And then the third fight for me was against a cat from the San Antonio area, I believe, from Pete Spratt, Muay Thai. His name was Caleb Peterwright, and he was solid. He was a very, very good striker. He had a decent kind of ground game, and that was a really big test for me. And that's, where that kind of story ends. I didn't make it to that next level that you could say was like UFC caliber to get there. I was just getting my feet wet. I will tell you a story. Before I had my first pro fight, I got a call from Dana White, a personal phone call, right, directly to me, right?
Oh.
Courtney at the time was working at like Reliant NRG for Aramark, doing like a suite attendant stuff, bartending in the suites as like a summer gig, like a side gig she was doing. And the Final Four for NCAA basketball was here in Houston at that time. And Dana White just so happened to be a guest in the suite she was attending at. And I guess she went like full PR mode and was telling him all about me and my record, this, that, and the other. And he said, this is, all what I was told. Said to her, well, what's his name again? What do they call him? She said, oh, it's Cody Owens. They call him the Texas Zombie. And he was like, oh, okay. Get him on the phone right now. And I guess there were some rumblings maybe they'd heard. They had their eyes on me of an up-and-coming guy. Mick Maynard, there's a lot of people. I fought for Legacy. I fought for Fury. So I was kind of in the mix with a bunch of people who may potentially have communicated some of this, like, hey, there's this guy coming up. And he called me. I had to pull over on the road, like, hey, what? Like, this is actually Dana White. I was like, nah, quit playing. Who is this? Like, no, man, hey, this is Dana White. And I pulled over. They basically told me, like, hey, we know who you are. We know what you're doing. Just keep doing what you're doing, and we'll come and get you. Like a Contender Series, or at the time he was real heavy into the Dana White, looking for a fight.
Oh, yeah.
Which I was actually supposed to fight on the Legacy 50 card that he came to watch. But unfortunately, I had a broken foot at the time, so I was in a boot sitting in the crowd at that
Oh no.
event. Yeah, so that was unfortunate. Which everything happens the way it's supposed to. That's perfectly fine. But I had at the end there, I was in camp before I had officially retired and had to. I was in camp for a fight. Out at the Golden Nugget in Louisiana, and that was essentially going to serve as like a springboard fight for me to kind of get me to the next level. But unfortunately, my body
Yeah.
gave way, my body failed. I'd redlined myself for a little too long and couldn't handle it anymore, so I had to medically throw in the towel.
So what exactly happened to your body? You know you we you and I have spoken about this personally, but you know what happened?
So it all goes back to middle school. I had a pole vaulting accident in middle school at morning practice one day. There's a particular way you hold your pole whenever you're getting ready to go down the runway, put it into the hard box, and it bends and flips you up and over. The soft spot is supposed to be on the top, and you're supposed to roll it in your hand so that your soft spot goes on top and you stick it into the hard box. It bends the proper way. And I had done it so many times. We had been doing this so many times that morning. Owens, you're up. I grabbed my pole, didn't really, I kind of eyeballed where it should be.
Yeah.
And it turned out the soft spot was a little wonky. It was a little on the side. When I went to hit the hard box, it didn't bend the proper way. It kind of went at a sideways angle and shot me straight up in the air, a few feet above wherever the bar was. And somehow I had turned all the way around in the air. And when I came down, I was basically like in a seated position, but I hit the hard box on my tailbone, like right in the middle of the soft pad. And everything just kind of wham, slammed down and compressed. I'd gotten up and walked down to the end of the runway, and I remember seeing all these little white dots all over. And then I passed out. I was gone. I woke up strapped down in the back of an ambulance, and they're like, "Mr. Owens, don't move, don't move." And I couldn't. I didn't have any feeling from the chest down for like 8 or 9 hours after I got to the hospital.
Wow.
They did a bunch of x-rays and all that fun stuff, and basically wrote it off as one of the worst stingers you can
Yeah.
get. I was like, okay. And I don't know if there was no follow-up visit or whatever the case may have been, but we're young, we're resilient.
Yeah.
I just kept on moving. Wore a neck brace for a few days to kind of keep everything in place, and then went right back to it. Then got into obviously the wrestling. Then there was the MMA and all that, and just kept going and kept going. And I'd always had issues, always had problems. And it wasn't until I started going to see a chiropractor regularly. I went and saw this guy, Fields Chiropractic, Dr. Andrew Garcia, right there in front of our gym
Oh yeah.
at
Yeah.
Torres,
Cool. Cool.
right there. And he did a full x-ray, full workup, my whole spine, everything. And he said, "Hey man, you ever been in a really bad car wreck or like had a really bad whiplash accident or anything like that?" And we tried to, figure out what it was, this, that, or the other. And then I mentioned the pole vaulting thing. And he goes, "That's exactly the injury that did it." And he goes, "The way you described it, that's exactly what happened." He said, "You've been living with a broken neck since the 8th grade." He said, "You
Whoa.
have a compression fracture of your C5 vertebrae, and all the disc above and below are basically at that time were like 30% degenerated." He said, "If you were to take like an Oreo and squeeze it and all the stuff comes out the side," he said, "that's basically what happened to all the disc above and below my C5 vertebrae," which was a really bad thing to hear, right?
Yeah.
And I had a long talk with him and asked, "In your opinion, do you think I should still be doing the things I'm doing, fighting and doing all this?" And he said, I can't tell you to not do or do anything, but he goes, you probably shouldn't be doing the things that could wear on your neck, like the MMA and stuff like that." So I took it with a grain of salt and essentially ignored it for
Yeah.
like 5 years. And then
That's what we do.
yeah. And then, it just got worse and worse. Every single camp that I would go through, it was always something that I would deal with. I always had this nagging pain, this like, you get that pain between your spine and your
Yeah.
shoulder blade right there and like your clavicle, whatever. Like I would always have that. I would always get like where I couldn't take a deep breath. I would always have like shortness of breath because like trying to take a deep breath, it would hurt that much. It would aggravate the nerves. Always inflamed, always in pain. I just constantly lived in a state of pain. And then obviously going back and looking at particularly my professional career, I had my 3 pro fights in 5 months' time. I was
God damn.
pedal to the metal,
Yeah.
trying to make it to the big show. I was trying to fight as much as possible, as often as possible to get there. And hindsight's 2020. Now I know that's essentially what redlined my body and pushed me over the edge. That basically my body told me like, hey man, we can't do this anymore. I was in camp whenever it all happened, and I'd always, like I said, dealt with the injury. I'd always had numbness and tingling in my left hand, particularly. It was the problem side. And there had started to become some atrophy to my tricep. My tricep wasn't firing. I had a lot of nerve impingement and stuff like that. And I was in camp. We were doing one of Travis's Warrior Crucibles, the famous Warrior Crucibles that Professor Travis does. They've morphed into quite the workout and challenge these days. At the beginning stages, it was a lot more of a controlled environment and things like that, where a lot was indoors. We would go over to All In and at Dr. Lou's and do all the workouts and all that stuff there. We'd gone over there and done all the pull-ups and all the push-ups and all the squats and the however many miles around the building. And we had already done all of that stuff. And I was in quite a bit of pain pushing through all that. The fact that I got through however many 300 pull-ups or whatever it was that we did and the accumulative effort, the fact that I got through all of those essentially with like 1.5 arms was wild. We got back to Travis's gym, had a little snack, had a little bite to eat, put the gis on, got ready to start doing some judo-style throws and takedowns and stuff. And I remember working with Narium. I'm not sure if you know Narium. He's now around, big-time MMA guy, but he does a lot of Muay Thai over at Sammy's Muay Thai now. Incredible guy, incredible athlete. If he ever chose to follow any of his likings, whether it was striking or grappling, whatever, he could be absolute world-class. So a lot of respect for that guy. But we were drilling and, just setting up different grips. I was trying to grab the sleeve grip, right? Setting up different throws. And I remember trying to grab the bottom of his sleeve and my hand it just wouldn't engage. It just kept slipping off. And I'd try to grab and it would make my arm burn even more. Something was happening with the nerve. Something was changing. And I remember telling Travis like, hey man, I might need to like take a break. And he knew coming from me, like something was happening. Something was wrong. He asked me immediately, is it your neck? Because he knew about my injury. And I told him, yeah. I said, I can't like squeeze my hand. It's got something changing. He said, okay, go get an ice pack, put an ice pack on it, and just sit down upstairs for a few minutes. And I went up there, and as I sat down, the tingling started spreading to my feet and into my leg. And I knew, okay, something is wrong here. So I decided to go get an MRI and figure out exactly what was going on again. Went and got the MRI. A good friend over who was working at All In at the time. He has his own place now, Paul Harris. He's got Delta V as his chiropractic office now. Great hands, great guy. And he's the one who read my results back to me the first time. And he read it to me like a doctor. He told me, oh yeah, you're all these different doctor terminologies. And I was like, hey, Paul, like, tell it to me like my friend. Like, tell it to me so I can understand. And he was like, look, dude, like it's time to pull the plug. He goes like, one little this or one little that way or this way. And he's like, that's the difference between maybe not walking and walking. And that was like a huge thing for me. And I'll never forget this, man. He told me, he said, Cody, what I want you to do is I want you to make a fist with that left hand. And you can see it right now. I made a fist. And he goes, I want you to look down at your fist. He goes, you see that fist? I said, yeah. He goes, you see that ring? I said, yeah. He goes, which one do you want to keep? And that shit hit me hard, dude. My wife, I love her to death. My brother, I love him. Those are my family. It was like the paranoia is really what prevents me, because I probably could still push through and still do it, But the paranoia, the thought of like my family having to watch me get stretchered out of the cage, like that just consumes me. And it's probably the single reason that I don't continue to fight. I don't want to find out like, what if this happened or what if that happened? I had a great run. It was amazing. I'm still very close to the sport. I'm still very involved with the sport. And who knows, maybe my brother might be, the next thing coming up. He's training. He's showed some interest in it personally. I never forced anything on him MMA wise. I told him I really don't ever want you to fight. I know how bad it could be for your body and how much your head is the target, essentially.
Yeah.
So
you're taking damage for sure.
So he might be the next thing coming up, and that's the game is so much different now than whenever I was fighting. There's so many more aspects to it, and there's so many more tools and weapons that are being used these days. And in order for me to get back in there, I would probably have to develop a little bit more in that way. I was getting ready for my last fight. I was just now getting into some really intricate footwork and head movement and like Vasily
Oh,
Lomachenko
yeah,
style
yeah, yeah, yeah,
footwork and
yeah.
movement. And I was really starting to get comfortable with that, switching stances and trying to like expand my striking arsenal, not just be so one dimensional power striker, getting into some more kicks and things like that. So I was really more of just a kickboxer. I really wanted to be a lot more diverse in my striking, and I didn't get to display it, which is fine, but I love teaching, coaching, and potentially giving all that back to the new generation.
Yeah, absolutely. I do feel like you said you wouldn't want to find out the what ifs. That's one of those things that you can't really afford to figure that out. Like I mean, I have some what ifs in my life too, but none of them involve me not walking again,
Yeah.
And I don't think, yeah, that I think is probably a smart decision. But again, per doctors, I went. This reminded me of a story. I had like a concussion. I was at 4 ounce, and like Larry Crow cracked me with the left
Oh
hand.
yeah.
Yeah,
Taekwondo Crow.
yeah, like almost not like Flash knocked me out. And he's like, "You good?" I'm like, "Yeah, we're good. We still sparred or whatever." And I went through the rest of the camp. My opponents pulled out. I went to the doctor because I had a headache for like 2 or 3 weeks
Oh
in
yeah.
a row. And he was like, "Hey, what's been happening?" I told him. He was like, "You probably have a concussion." I was like, "Well, what should I do?" He's like, "Probably just should stop fighting." And I just went, "Yeah, no, that's not gonna
That's not
happen."
gonna happen. Yeah.
And he looked at me dead. I'm for real. He goes, "I'm just a doctor. What do I know?" I was like,
Yeah.
"Okay, fair."
Yeah.
And then lo and behold, I ended up stopping again. But that's probably a very wise decision.
Yeah, it's something that I fight with. When I first retired, quote unquote, I think MMA fighters are never officially retired.
Right.
They're inactive,
Yeah, yeah.
So when I always say quote unquote retired, I did a lot of soul searching because a lot of my identity was wrapped up in being an MMA fighter, the Texas Zombie.
Yeah.
That was this whole brand and this whole image and this guy that I turned into to get to these fights. And I want to, while we're talking about that, I want to kind of notate something. This is something that's kind of a new thing that I've come across, and I think if any MMA fighters listen to this will be really good for them to take away. So all throughout fight camp, you spend 8 weeks trying to become this thing, become this monster, this guy, to climb the mountain is now what I call it. You're climbing the mountain. Fight night is the pinnacle. That's the tip of the mountain. You've got there. And then whether the result is win, lose, draw, doesn't matter. You still have to deal with now coming down the mountain, right? And now I understand it. Now I understand why I acted the way I acted and why I was the way I was to some people, and maybe robbed some good times and things like that, some great experiences from some people, because I was still stuck in this mode, this Texas zombie. So I think for fighters to understand, getting up the mountain is hard, but the hardest part about fighting is coming back down the mountain,
Yeah.
turning that switch off. There's like a 2-week adjustment period where you're not just going to go back to your normal life. You're not just going to, hey, what's up, guys? Go back to your office job and everything's cool. You've trained your mind and your body for so long to get adapted to this one task, this one guy or gal. And you're essentially going in there trying to kill them with your bare hands, and they're going to try to do the same thing to you. And you got to try to stop that from happening. It's a very serious interaction of, martial combat. And the day after, yeah, you're cool and you're having fun and you're drinking and you're partying and you're eating, but in your mind, you're still that guy standing
I
at
wish
the
a
top of the
motherfucker
mountain.
would right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like you're ready to snap in traffic. You're hostile. Like it's all still like that. So for all the girlfriends and the wives and even the boyfriends and husbands of the female fighters, that's something that if you are part of the process all the way through, you see the weight cut, you see the camp, you see all the blood, sweat, and tears, you understand what it takes to get there. But that's the part I think as partners, they got to understand, and I want people to know that they're not being an asshole. They're not intentionally
Right,
being
yeah.
this person. It's who they had to become to go to war, to go to battle, and then getting back down that mountain. It takes a little bit of time. Some fighters do it better than others. Some fighters can, they can snap out of it pretty quick and they're back to the normal thing. But for some fighters, for me particularly, I knew I kind of had to become the Texas Zombie and create that guy in my mind to go and put him in the cage. And once I realized after the fact, like that's why I was so angry and touch and go all the time, is because I was still so locked in, man. So I think for fighters to come down the mountain, know that that's a process you have to work on too. That's part of your fight camp as well. That's like post-fight, post-camp. You have to walk yourself down the mountain and get back down into the valley where all your friends and family are, you know?
Yeah.
Like, hey, here we are, guys. It's all cool
I'm back.
again.
I'm
Yeah,
back.
I'm
Yeah.
back. Yeah. So
Man, that's
I
great.
wanted, I know I kind of went on a side tangent there,
No,
but
that's
I
good.
did want to, that's something that's kind of a new revelation in my life where I look back at my career. Because like I said, I think about it all the time. I contemplate coming back all the time. I'm like, you know what? Maybe this year's the year I just say, fuck it. I'm gonna fight. I'd be like, I'd really like to say I was 10-0 overall.
Yeah.
You know, like
Right,
that'd be
yeah.
cool. But
Yeah.
to get back to your original point, after I retired, quote unquote retired, I did a lot of soul searching. I did a lot of trail running. I would just get a water pack on my back, nice pair of trail shoes, and just take off in the woods for hours, 13, 14, 15 miles, would just take off. And that was like, I would do the same thing. I'd go to the little bike park or whatever, little concrete trails and stuff, and just same thing. Would just disappear in the woods for hours, ride my bike. And that really helped me a lot because my identity was so wrapped up in being an MMA fighter. And then I did all that between riding the bike, running in the woods, playing Call of Duty. I did all that
Yeah.
for almost a year before I did anything. I didn't do any jujitsu, any wrestling. I didn't do anything. I hardly even watched fights because I was just so
You would get wrapped back up. into it.
exactly. I
Yeah.
was just so adamant about like you have to close this chapter. Like
Yeah.
this is your life pans out in this large book and you have so many chapters to it and one day you're going to have to turn the page and then now there's a new chapter. This chapter's over. We have to start something new. And that was like the beginning of what started the wanting to be an incredible coach, wanting to really get back into jujitsu, get so good in the gi, get familiar with the gi game and how
Yeah.
complex it's becoming, really lock in and figure out the leg lock system and the leg lock game. And when I came back, that was like the first thing. I got in the gi and was like, okay, cool, I can do this. But it dramatically changed the way I did jujitsu. I used to be a real like wrestle heavy, take you down, pressure on top. Jace Petrie was my coach,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that, one pace Jace, baby.
Yeah.
That's that's the game. Get on top, stay on top, put all your pressure into the size of a quarter on them,
Yeah.
and smash them. And that puts your head in the way a lot. It puts your neck at jeopardy a lot. A lot of guillotines, front headlocks, a lot of stuff like that where you'd have to really fight out of some things. Darces, anacondas. Like it became a thing where I'd go to training and then I'd have to take 3 or 4 days off just because I couldn't move my neck. I couldn't look around like, damn,
Yeah.
I can't do that kind of training anymore. So then I turned to becoming a guard player. I would slap bump and just sit down. Get my head as far away from you as possible. You got to
Yeah.
get past my guard. I can lock you up. I can walk my legs up, try to armbar, triangle, all these things where my head stays away. And unless I get stacked, obviously, but there's different ways to approach that. But that became the focus for me. Get a good guard, get great in the gi, figure the leg locks out. Anything that could put my head
Yeah.
far away from you, I was all about that. So that was where like all of that obsession came with when I got back into everything. It was just like, all right, let's just get good in the gi. Let's get good in jujitsu because in this arena, I'm in control. If this shit gets uncomfortable, if this starts to hurt, all I have to do is tap.
Yeah.
And
that's
it's
it.
done. They stop right there. Can't be in the middle of a fight going, something doesn't, hold
hang
on,
on,
time
time
out,
out.
real.
Yeah.
Now I
Yeah.
got money on the line. I got
Yeah.
sponsorships on the line, my record on the line, all these
Yeah.
things that you
Matter.
can't take back anymore. So
Right.
those are all things I wasn't, again, the paranoia. I wasn't willing to find out. I didn't need to know. I was willing to say, okay, for my body's sake, for my ability to keep my brain intact and give what knowledge I do have back to whomever wants to listen, this is where I got to close this chapter. And now let's focus on being a jiu-jitsu competitor, being a coach, work your way toward a black belt, become a professor, all these things I've started to check off my list of what I wanted to do after I retired. Like I'm 33 right now. Some would say I'm still right in the middle of it. Like I
Yeah.
said, I probably could still fight if I wanted to, but I don't want to find out how it's going to feel. I live in pain, intense pain every single day. I refuse to get on any type of pain pills or anything like that. In my younger years, I had an addiction that I had to deal with, that I had to fight, and I was able to overcome that, and I'm proud of that. And it just basically left me with, again, the paranoia. If I'm hurt and I start taking these pills, damn, it feels good to take these things. Well, let me
Yeah.
take another one, and just in case I hurt later, let me go ahead and, it becomes
slide right
yeah,
back down.
it
Yeah.
becomes a problem. So I refuse to really do anything like that. it wasn't until late last year that I finally decided to get like some epidural style shots in my neck. I got in a car wreck in June of last year, sitting at a red light. I got rear-ended, just molly-whopped. And it changed something. My right hand started tingling. I had something change, whether it was a different bulge or, a different herniation or something changed. So they sent me to get a new MRI, and I have discovered what my neck used to be is now much worse.
Oh, no.
Yeah. They said we're going to do all the pain management. I went and saw Paul. 13, 14, maybe 15 visits of manual work, working on it, and had a lot of improvement in circulation and nerve flow, stuff like that. So that was very good. But they wanted to make sure everything was good because there was still some residual stuff left over. And the left side had flared up again, a lot more active. It was a consistent thing, not just here and there. So they sent me to get the shots. They did, put me to sleep, put the shots in my neck, all that fun stuff. And they lasted like 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
It wasn't very much at all. But those 3 or 4 days, I tell you what, man, if that's what living pain-free is like, goodness, man, like
Yeah.
that's amazing. So I got to, go through all that, and they wanted to continue. And the next thing that they want to do is to try to snip the nerves, which I'm not real comfortable with because what's my pain management, what's my signal going to be like? So I'm exploring all these different options still right now, going through. This is something I'm currently still dealing with, still battling, is this neck injury. So the ultimate resolve, the ultimate fix that they say they want to do to me, when I first retired, I was 26, they wanted to do a 3-level fuse on my neck, 4, 5, and 6. Now, because obviously I still have been banging my neck up and doing different things, the car wreck obviously probably changed a lot. They now want to do a 4-level fuse. And at
Jeez.
33 years old,
Yeah.
I know it hurts like hell right now. 44 is probably going to hurt. 55, 66, they're all going to hurt real bad. But I don't want to be in a position where I don't have the mobility. I don't have the ability to do the things I still want to do in my life. Like someone will say, hey, Cody, and I got to turn my whole body around to look at them. That's a pretty massive fuse. I've looked into a lot of different things as well, they can actually do disc replacements now. A lot of people are getting these things done. Aljamain Sterling, he had a disc replacement done, came back and won the world title. So it's possible.
Yeah.
They told me, for me, though, the problem is because there's so many layers of damage, they can't do multiple level disc replacements just yet. Maybe in the future, at least here in the States, they can't do it. Maybe Switzerland, stuff like that over where, Costa Rica, whatever. They might be able to do these types of things. Obviously, they cost a lot of money.
Sure. Yeah.
But they say in order to do like a 1 or 2 level, there has to be something above and below the artificial disc for it to securely anchor on. And because I have so many levels of damage, basically they told me now C2 to C7 in my neck is all pretty much wasted, which used to be 4, 5, 6, and a little bit of 7 is now from 2 all the way down to 7. So the wreck probably played a big factor in that. And obviously I still do combat sports. I still train, and although I do it a lot smarter, shit still happens. I'm dealing with a stiff neck right now, so it's just, it is what it is. And I just manage it the best that I can. I do a lot of manual therapy, stretching, massaging. I got all the tools you could ever imagine to massage your body with. So I do as much of that as I can to stay going.
You're probably the only person that I've talked to so far that does any sort of recovery besides, I stretch and I go to sleep.
Well, I say I do it. Consistency is the secret to anything, right?
Right.
It's, how often do you do it? How long are you doing it for? Like, I'll do some stretches. Obviously, I have these big rings that you can lay on. There's 3 different sizes. I use those frequently because I keep them in my living room behind the TV.
Yeah.
So I see them, I pull them out,
Yeah.
I have all the sew rights and the sew back.
Yeah.
I have all that stuff as well. So a lot of it now is preventative maintenance.
Right,
It used
right.
to be, especially when I was fighting. That's probably part of the reason why my career ended as short as it did, is I didn't maintain my body as well as I probably should. But preventative maintenance is huge. The resistance bands, those are probably some of the most useful tools for preventative maintenance. Stretching those resistance bands and getting the necessary warm and prime into your muscles before you try to start doing things is super important. It used to be the mindset of like, oh shit, this hurts, now I have to deal with it. Or
Right.
I twisted or busted or cracked this, now I
Yeah.
got to give it attention. And it was always the after. So the before is really the big thing now. And I try to do as much as I can, and I say I do it, but I'm not as nearly consistent as I'd like to be or probably as I need to be. So that's something I'm always working on, is trying to build a routine of get up and do this and do that and stretch and make sure if I'm sitting for too long, I'm doing those things. But a neck stretching routine is pretty regular for me in the car. On the way to work, on the way here, on the way anywhere, I'm usually doing some form of a neck stretch because I'm always dealing with neck pain.
You're in the car so often too, so it's like, all right, I mean, Americans are in the car for so long, not just you personally, but I wanted to share a quick story. You said that this was kind of your persona for a while, and my last fight was in 2018. It was just a boxing match. It was just like I was with the fire department at the time, and it was firefighters versus police officers, and I fought my brother.
Is that Battle of the Badges?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I fought my brother, Chris, and Bob was in my corner.
Yep.
And I was all getting warmed up in the back. I was ready to go. I never liked people coming up to me before all my fights and asking me all these questions and shit.
Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm like, bro,
No,
yeah.
I'm not.
If I wouldn't fucking be here
Exactly.
right now. Yeah. So like, I was in that zone. I was like, he's not my brother. Like, I'm gonna try to punch his face off.
Yep.
And my dad came in the back, and he was like, "How do you feel?" I was like, "Fine." And he was asking me all these questions. Like, I go, "Dad, I can't deal with this right now. You need to leave. Like,
Yeah.
get out."
I'm about to get in a fist fight.
Yeah. He was like, "Whoa, well, calm down." I was like, "No, I'm not going to calm down because he's going to try to hurt me. I'm going to try to hurt him. You can't play boxing. Like, just get out of
That's
here."
it.
And Bob looks at me, and my dad goes, "Wow." And Bob goes, "Yes, he is a very intense young man."
Yes. Yes.
And after that, after the fight ended, I was like, "Hey, you can't be. I'm sorry, but you gotta let me have some space here, because I'm at this 10 out of 10 right
100%.
now.
Yeah.
Trying
Like,
to,
I'm ready to kill everybody now.
yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, so you're still dealing with the neck injury. Obviously, you're still training. Does combat jiu-jitsu? Okay, so I guess my question is, you don't want to fight anymore, but you go into combat jiu-jitsu. How does that differ? I mean,
To me, it's the closest I can scratch that itch.
Yeah.
Right. It's the closest thing to actually getting in a fight that I could get to. Oh, sorry.
it's all good.
Smack the mic there. But yeah, it's like it's the closest thing that I could get to an actual MMA fight. So it was an opportunity that was presented to me. I think 2020 was like the first one that I had done. And Eddie, they were looking for people for a featherweight fight. It was all in the featherweight bracket, which means there was going to be potentially like there was a 16-man bracket altogether, so I could have 4 fights, right, to get to the main and collect all the money. And I was a purple belt. The first 2 that I had done was a purple belt, and out there with all these high-level black belts like Nathan Orchard, all these guys that were in this bracket with me. It was like a part of me was just like happy to be there, but I was like, all right, I got to try to like
Fuck these guys
I gotta try
up.
to mess these dudes up,
Yeah.
like these are like people I've been watching and stuff, but I
Right.
still have to try and do my best to go out there and show them that I belong here, But for me, it was like, so those who may not know, combat jiu-jitsu is basically jiu-jitsu with open hand strikes. You can slap, you can open hand palm strike. Once one opponent is down on the ground, considered grounded, you can start smacking each other.
There's no strike standing up.
No strike
Right.
standing up, no kicks, nothing
Yeah.
like that to deal with, no knees or anything, just open hand strikes. So coming from the MMA background, I'm like, okay, well, I'm not getting punched in the face.
Yeah.
I'm not getting kicked in the face. Like,
Or elbowed. in the
yeah,
head.
or elbowed. Yeah. I can mitigate damage. I can control posture, things like that, and take a reasonable amount of damage and not be hurt like I could get hurt in a fight, right? Maybe a little bloody lip, a busted nose. Worst thing is you get cut,
Yeah.
that's going to happen. So it was a good opportunity for me to like get back in the mix. It was like, okay, like I've been doing jujitsu tournaments and really trying to stay heavy with jujitsu. It was like, now this is a little different. This is a little extra. And I remember the first camp for that was, man, I was so adamant on striking. I was like, well, you get to do jujitsu with hits. I was like, bro. And every camp was all like, all the rounds in camp were all like just strike dominated. Doing jiu-jitsu to control positions and dominate and solidify the movement. But I was trying to hit people. I'm like, I want to be the first guy to get a CJJ knockout, and I was trying to. I go out there against this really high-level wrestler, guy who trains at Eddie's gym in LA, at the headquarters out there. Luis Quinones was his name, and still trains out there. He's his black belt now, United World Wrestling team member, like
Wow.
great wrestler, right? And I was like, okay, I'm a wrestler too. You know,
Let's go for it. Let's
you know,
do
let's
it.
let's
Yeah.
have a wrestling match and see who ends up better at jujitsu. And go out there and wrestle. And there's a particular rule set. They have the get down rule. After 60 seconds of no action, nothing gets it to the floor. Do a coin toss, or whoever's dominating the pace or whatever gets to choose the position. And it's basically a butterfly guard. If you're on bottom, butterfly guard with double underhooks. And on the top, you know, you're in that guard. You have to deal with it. And I had not really trained that much of that position because I never expected that we would
Yeah.
wrestle for 60 seconds. Like, of course we're going to get to the ground.
Someone's going to get taken down. Yeah.
Or I'll just hit guard. But it never happened. It didn't play out that way. And we go to that position, and I was inexperienced in that position and gave up a pass, pretty much gave up the pass, but I was so focused on trying to hit this dude. I was just trying to strike and hit him, and he sucked up all the space, slowly, surely, past the guard, made me turn, gave my back up, and of course, you know what's going to happen. He sunk the choke in, got the rear naked choke, and although it was a great experience, I was extremely upset with my performance. I knew I was better than what I had showed, and I was eager to get back in the mix, and I got to do so. They let me come back the year later for the next featherweight bracket. It was a much better showing. Still a purple belt, but it was a much better showing. I ended up going against this guy, Todd Walling, who was a black belt, very, very talented guy, really intricate leg locks and stuff like that. And I had been really practicing the rule set this time. I was prepared for the rule set, and I did not want to go to the get down rule. So I came out, slap bump, and sat to guard immediately. It was like I'm comfortable, like I talked about before, getting my head away from people and playing my guard. That's all I had been doing. So I was comfortable now playing guard. So I sat, played the guard, and then we go through a lot of really high-level leg entanglements, all these different positions. I followed through, he followed through, we're chasing the toe hold, chasing heel hooks, and we ended up in another really deep kind of 50-50 battle where he's attacking my feet, and I decided to get into a shootout. Decided, okay, he's attacking my feet, well, I'm going to try to get him before he gets me. And he had just enough more, just a better grip, and was able to get the necessary leverage with a nice little heel hook, and I had to tap, you know. But lasted way longer, really put a fight. I was able to land a lot of nasty strikes in that fight. He was wearing it all over his face. I was throwing him like, you know, Boss Rutan style.
Hank Gray style.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was really hitting hard. And in the commentary, they talk about, you know, how I was throwing him like an up kick or throwing him like a punch, you know. And it was really cool to kind of get the recognition for the striking when that's what I wanted to do so much, you know.
Yeah.
But a lot more jiu-jitsu was played that time, and that was, you know, a really great experience. I got to get a lot more comfortable with the rule set and kind of understand the strategy more. Obviously, when you go to these types of things, strategy is always a factor. And I'm not just this MMA guy who's going to come over here and knock guys out. Now, I understand that. These guys are playing the rule set. They're playing strategy, looking to get to overtime if necessary and play the EBI overtime rules,
Gotcha.
which can be a shootout as well. So these are all things I was aware of now, and I was impressed and happy with my performance the second time around, but still not satisfied, right? I want to get to that second round. I want to beat one guy at least
Yeah.
and get to the second round, you know? Like, it's cool being here as a purple belt and everything and representing my team on that big stage. Meant so much to me, but I'm a competitor at heart. I want to win. Why do we play the game, you know?
Right.
To win.
Yeah, exactly.
So I wanted to go out and potentially get another opportunity, and just so happens that coming up here on March 24th, there's another featherweight bracket, 16-man bracket being put into place, and I've been confirmed, given the word from Master Eddie Bravo himself, I will be in that tournament. So I got another combat jiu-jitsu coming up. The third time around maybe is the charm.
Yeah.
I'm a black belt now with a much more sophisticated set of tools, and I'm really amped up and looking forward to being able to display them. I mean, I guess official first day of camp started yesterday, and you can see it on my face already. I'm scratched up, got a black eye. So we're going to train hard and train right for this one.
I saw some pictures. Jeremy posted some like, oh, first day of camp, and I was like, oh fuck, I didn't even know he was thinking about getting back in there in the mix and doing some combat jiu-jitsu.
You messaged me, you're like, camp?
Yeah.
What? Like, no.
Yeah, I was like,
Combat jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I was like, wait.
You're not the only one.
Yeah.
People are like, well, you're going to fight again? Like, no.
Well,
no.
sort of,
Not
but
like you
yeah.
think. Yeah.
So in combat jiu-jitsu, strikes are I guess they're opportunistic in a way. It's not just strict jiu-jitsu where you're just like
Right.
positioned, make sure you're getting to the spots first. How do you think a strict
There we go.
jiu-jitsu,
Yep.
there we go, got it, practitioner will come in and kind of like change his game to deal with the strikes?
So the very first one that I did, I was a special match. I wasn't part of the 16-man bracket. The fellow who went on to win, Tom Halpin, was the guy who won, and he threw 0 strikes.
Yeah.
He just was able to. He got hit a few times, but striking was not a part of his game plan. And there's a lot of guys now. You look at some of the guys that are winning these tournaments and winning the belt for combat jiu-jitsu. They're not throwing the most amount of strikes. It's really throw the strikes to get them to move, to get them to
Set
let go
things
of
up.
things. Exactly. It's like the kind of like a lot of it. I wouldn't say it's anti-jiu-jitsu, but it's a lot of strategy. It's a lot of let's not engage all the way, kind of play the in between, and then let's work toward whether it be the overtime rules or whatever they're working toward. There's a lot more strategy involved than I guess from when the first few shows of combat jiu-jitsu came around. Everyone was really stoked on the striking and stoked on the hitting. That was a lot more ingrained. And every match is different. Obviously, you're going to see so many different matches, so many different styles. Some MMA guys that are coming over, like Uriah Faber's done, the combat jiu-jitsu and all these different MMA guys, they're going to be like me. I'm going to try to hit this guy. They're going to be strike-oriented. Then you got guys like Tom and some more people who basically just focus on the jiu-jitsu. Like, that's it. They just try to do the jiu-jitsu. They'll take a couple hits. If they need to kind of give you a little pop one time to get you to let go or move, then that's it. But that's the focus now, is to make sure that I'm aware of what I need to be doing when I need to be doing it. Strike when it's permitted, but focus on maintaining control of positions to ultimately lead to a submission if you can. Because the chances of a knockout or a TKO are there, but a submission is exponentially higher than a TKO. I mean, they're going to protect these guys if there's a bunch of unanswered strikes. Yeah, you've seen plenty of TKOs now. Damian Anderson with an actual KO in combat jiu-jitsu.
Is that the one where the guy had single leg X on him?
Knocked him out cold. Yeah, exactly. So it's possible. It can happen.
Yeah.
You're creating enough force in certain positions. You can knock a guy out with an open hand strike. But I think a lot more of it is like it's leg lock and like rear naked chokes. I mean, that's a big thing, and I feel pretty confident in both those areas. So like I said, I plan to be extremely well prepared this time around and do it camp style, do it the real way, like I'm getting ready for an MMA fight,
Yeah.
The big key is that it's in Mexico City, which is almost 8,000 feet above sea level. So it's like we're going to be fighting on top of a mountain. So cardio is going to be king.
How are you going to prepare for that?
I've always prided myself on having great cardio, being able to set a great pace. So my whole career, every Sunday, I ran bleachers every Sunday. That's part of what I've continued to do over the time. Is even anytime I need conditioning or I need to get in some sort of shape, I lean on the bleachers. There's obviously different training masks and elevation training masks, all these things you could do like that. But we're gonna do what we need to do to make sure that we're able to push the pace at that type of elevation. I feel confident in the gas tank I'm able to possess. I just need to be able to make sure that I can do it for X amount of time, 10 minutes.
So it's a 10-minute round? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I know. I had an elevation mask too, and people were like, "Oh, that shit doesn't work," and I'm like, I don't care if it works or not. It's restricting my breathing.
Right.
I'm not gonna go do a bench press with it on.
Right.
I'm going to do sprints or whatever.
Exactly.
Because I know I remember when it first came out, it was like a fucking gas mask.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you couldn't see shit out of it. And then now it's like
Just over the face. Yeah, over the face.
And I know some guys who like have the over the face one and they like go lift weights with it on. I'm like, okay.
I have this thing. It came out many years ago. I don't know if there's like a new iteration of it now or not, but I use it and it works wonders. It's the Boss Rutan O2
Dude,
trainer.
I've been. Oh my god, I've been.
So
worried.
you focus on diaphragmatic breathing, focus on enlarging the diaphragm muscle to be able to intake more oxygen. It's all you're doing is you're working the muscle that controls the lungs, basically. And that thing is a weapon. I mean, I believe in it. You could do it for 5 minutes a day, and you're expanding lung capacity, breath hold capacity. Like, there's so many benefits to it. Like, there's some times where you use it and you're like, man, I feel like my abs are just growing. I mean, it's true. And it's in his little promo and everything, but you build your core with it. And you're using all those muscles in a very particular trained way to try and breathe, because most people don't realize, but there's 4 levels of breathing. Most people only get into the second level. We breathe into our nasal passages, into our head, and we breathe into our top part of our lungs. Then you get into the diaphragm, then you get into the belly, which is the deepest part of breathing. So belly breathing is the deepest breath you could get. The diaphragm controls everything to make sure it's all properly pumping in and out. But most people, especially in a panic situation, they only get the hyperventilation type of breathing, which is the short top
Yeah.
of your chest style breathing. And then a big thing for me is, so when you think about like breath hold, if you want to hold your breath, most people start wherever they are. Like I'm talking right now and I'll go, and now I'm holding my breath. But I wasn't at a position where all of my air had been removed from my lungs to get a real, true, deep breath. You got to push everything out first and then pull in. And that's where you start to realize, whoa, there's this level of breathing I never even thought I could get to, this belly breathing. And it's a big thing I used to tell all my fighters, to all my jiu-jitsu athletes, like, 3 really deep breaths, 3 legit diaphragm, belly breathing style breaths, and all that, that after you're round or after it all goes away. You're right back to normal. Focus now on getting your mouthpiece out, getting water in, the ice on my back, the advice the coach is giving to me. I'm not just focused on where the hell's the air,
Right.
freaking
Yeah.
out, panicking, everything's wah, you can't hear anything else. You're not focused on
Yeah,
anything
yeah.
else, but where's the air? So being able to get the heart rate back down, calm the breathing back down, it's always been something that I trained, something that I was aware of. The sprints, hill sprints, and things like that, and then wearing a heart rate monitor or whoop strap or something like that, where you could monitor your heart rate and be able to say, okay, I peaked, I got here, now I got 1 minute to get back down to a
Yep.
certain thing, and then I got to go back. So heart rate variability, that type of stuff was very big for me. I did a lot of that stuff to try to make sure that my cardio was always tip top. I would work out in the necessary zones to get the cardio to build, that type of stuff. I got real nerdy about that stuff, particularly in my professional career, because I, want to do everything like a pro. So I got into the numbers, the stats, really started wearing the whoop strap to track everything, my sleep, that type of stuff. So that's where I got nerded out with all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
No, I did too. I was a big swimmer. I swam a lot. When I was training for any type of competition, I would always try to swim, because if I didn't have like my elevation mask or something like that, or if I was in a pinch and I needed to do some cardio, swimming got me.
It's a full body workout.
Yeah.
And you don't realize like how much you are using your lungs, how much
Yeah.
like you see these Olympic swimmers or people who are good at swimmers, and they can just go down and back
Yeah.
and down and back and down and back for an hour, right? They're just
And-
getting their laps in, right?
It's crazy.
You go in there and you try to go like freestyle stroke down and back twice. You get done, you're like, I am gonna pass out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why can't I breathe?
Yeah.
And I would do quite a bit of that too, getting ready for some things. We have, the swimming pool at the complex we live at, and get in there, put the goggles on, look like I know what I'm doing,
Yeah.
and try to go in and get as many laps in, work the cardio, push the cardio. I do a lot of breath hold stuff, honestly,
Yep.
to really work the capacity and grow the capacity. It's like
I did that
when
as well.
you're eating food, so you have a burger, you got fries, and you got a drink. And you're eating everything, and you're getting down to where you're starting to feel full, but there's that one bite of that burger left, and there's like 6 fries. And you're like, fuck it, I'm going to smash it. And you smash it, right?
Yeah.
Because like, hey, it's just a little bit. But now that you've done that, your stomach had to grow a little bit in order to make that happen. And now the next time you have to eat, you got to eat a little bit more to get that same full sensation, right? So I try to use that concept with the lungs the same way. If I can get to a lung capacity to where I could go down and hold and force more lung expansion, now my lungs have to breathe an even deeper breath to get the same type of deep breath feeling. And the breath holds were huge for that. And that gave me, I could hold my breath for a few minutes. And
Yeah.
It was scary at times when you're underwater going, I got to get the hell out of here. I'm all by myself,
Yeah.
going to drown myself.
Yeah.
So you got to stay close to the edge, keep a hand up top so you can pull yourself up. But yeah,
was the
cardio,
same.
man. All that to say that, cardio is king. I say it all the time. It's something that my brother repeats to people, but I think if you have more tools than me, you got a better skill set than me, and you got more weapons than me, but I'm going to be in your face all night until you get tired, and then you do get tired, I'm going to
It's game
eventually overwhelm you, right?
Yeah.
So cardio has always been a huge thing for me.
Yeah, after my first MMA fight, I got gassed in the 3rd round because I didn't know what to expect going in there, and I was still up at Stephen F. Austin trying to train, and I didn't really have a camp for that fight. And so I was trying to do like sprints and stuff like that. It just didn't work out well for me. So come third round, I was like, oh shit, man.
When that lactic acid
Yeah.
starts to build up,
I
yeah,
was like, if I can
arms
just
get
use
real
the
filled
jab,
with blood and
yeah.
heavy. Yeah,
just pump the jab and kick the leg, and hopefully he doesn't take me down and get
Yeah.
on top of me or whatever. But right after that, every other fight that I've had since then, I'm like, I'm swimming in the morning, I'm doing sprints in the morning, I'm wearing the elevation mask during my HIIT workouts, I'm doing breath holds in the pool. I remember I would swim like laps or whatever, and then at the very end, I would be breathing heavily, and I'm like, all right, 2 deep breaths. I'm gonna hold my breath and see how far I can swim.
there you go.
And I
Keep
would
pushing it.
yeah. And sometimes I would be swimming, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna die here. In a
Yeah,
second.
I
But
have to-
I
I have
can
to come
make
up.
it. Yeah, I'm like, I can see the wall. Just get to the wall. You're almost there.
Yep.
You can get to the wall. And whenever I would get to the wall, I'd be like, okay, all right, let's take like 30 seconds and let's see if we can go back.
Right.
And it was super beneficial because then all the other fights, I was like, man, I feel fucking great.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not gonna, same thing, same concept. And I feel like now, like, I feel like strength and conditioning is kind of like going out of people's programs.
Well, I think the big thing now is like specialist coaches, right? There's a lot of these guys who are specialists. I mean, we all remember when Connor came out with Ido Portal and all
Yeah.
of the movement, playing touch butt in
Yeah.
the park, that
Yeah.
type of stuff. It all served its purpose, right? But I don't want to call them gurus or whatever, but like that guy, I forget his name, but the guy that TJ Dillashaw and a few other guys were using, it's just like this guy in his garage. He's got all these different equipment set up in there, and they track all the heart rates and statistics and all the science behind it and stuff like that. Same thing, Henry Cejudo, they got this whole like science program that they use to break everything down. So it's like specialist type stuff like that. And I think that the highest level fighters that are able to get to the UFC PI, everything you need is there.
Yeah.
Everything. They've done a great job with providing that to all the fighters. If you can get to it, like it's all there for you, down to your nutrition, down to
Yep.
your supplements, like it's all there for you. And I think that has strength and conditioning is always going to be a part of every fighter's. It should be part of every fighter's thing, whether you're doing body weight stuff or functional workouts or whatever you're doing to increase your strength, taking the necessary supplements and working on your riding your bike and swimming or whatever you're doing. But a lot of guys now, there's a lot of information out there that's easily accessible, and you can go do things. I'm struggling here. What do I need? I'm struggling here. What do I need? And I know a lot of guys that do it on their own. I did everything a lot on my own,
I did as well.
but I have to give 100% credit to taking me to the next level was Alyssa Cantu at Grindhouse.
Yeah.
Like I was doing a lot on my own, but once I started working with her, I mean, the fight specific stuff, fight specific workouts and different routines she put together for me, that took me to the next level. And still to this day, there's so many things I use from her, workouts that she sent me when I was a fighter that I still use today, kettlebell workouts and different things like that to muscle confusion, to push
Yeah.
the heart rate up and then work your strength and all these different things that she would do. She was very good at designing and programming things for me. And I think if you can find someone like that you can call your specialist coach. I mean, she runs a big, facility, Grindhouse. They got all different. They have MMA, jiu-jitsu. They have the strength side, all that, the weightlifting side, and everything. So it's a huge thing now. But she was my specialist coach at the time. She was like my secret weapon that whatever I couldn't do, she got me over the edge and made
Yeah.
sure I was more than prepared for all of my fights.
She's good, man. She's real good. And that
But
facility's cool too.
You should still do strength and conditioning, whether it's on
Yeah.
your own or you find a coach for it or you find one of these specialists that could really hone in on you individually and get what you need. I think that it's definitely a necessity.
I was a big proponent of that myself as well because I remember being in that position like, oh man, I'm very tired right now, and then I remember if I feel like this and this guy has a bigger gas tank than me, I went back and rewatched it or whatever, and I was like, dude, if he would have had a bigger gas tank, he would have pieced me up. I would have been knocked unconscious. I would have been beaten up way worse than what I was. So right after that, I made it a point during my camps and whatnot, I was like, I am doing some form of strength and conditioning at least 3 times a week or running some form of cardio just to make sure I don't ever feel like that again.
Exactly.
Because it is a horrible feeling you're just like,
Oh, yeah.
like
It's not good at all.
nothing that I do.
It was my second amateur fight is what did it for me. I fought this kid, Taylor Shoffett. He came in and he threw, I don't know how many overhand rights trying to knock my block off, right? But I remember there was a portion of the fight where we kind of locked up with each other and engaged. and he felt so much stronger than me, and I did not like the way that felt.
Yeah.
I remember thinking after the fight, man, if I hadn't have got him out of there quick, I don't know how that fight would have ended
Yeah.
up because he felt really strong. You know, when you kind of lock up with somebody, you could feel a little push pull, and you're like,
Yeah.
there was a lot more push than pull there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I felt a little bit of that, and I was like, I don't ever want to feel that in a fight ever again. And that's when I was like, okay, we had to
Yeah.
figure this thing out. We got to get a routine. We got to figure something out to get stronger. And man, thanks to that guy because it definitely benefited my career down the line.
You have to prioritize it for sure. I want to switch gears just a little bit. You got your black belt here recently.
Back in December, yes, sir.
Yeah. You worked so hard for so long to get to the pinnacle. Everybody that trains jiu-jitsu wants the black belt, except maybe Sean Strickland. But,
Yeah,
but like
that's true.
So can you describe just how that felt? I was there. I watched it, but
You know, to want something so bad for so long and then to finally have it, it's a pretty unique feeling. Like 13 years is what I put in to get to where I am now, 13 and some change, whatever. But I remember the whole process, the whole journey. I remember all the belts, and I remember thinking at the beginning, like, man, I'll never get to black belt. Like, it's so far away. The things that I know how to do or I'm aware of the techniques, like, it's so far away. And like I said earlier, the only secret to anything is consistency, and that was it. Now that I've got here, now that I'm a black belt, I can tell you the secret is out. That's the
Yeah.
only thing. It's consistency. You won't get better if you're not at the gym. So just showing up every day and constantly putting the work in, that's the big thing. But for me that day, it was like, we're just there for a seminar,
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, random seminar on a Wednesday? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'm here for it.
Count me
my
in,
my
right.
guy Philippe coming in to show some good stuff. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm in, And then as the day went by, like more people started showing up. Another black belt walks in. Another black belt walks in. Like, damn, what's Todd doing here? Damn, what's Alex Morano doing here? And this is towards the end of like the sparring we were doing and everything. And I'm like, okay, like there's a lot of guys here for this seminar. I'm like, something's going on here,
Yeah.
right? And then it started kind of clicking to me once I realized Alex was there. He wasn't in his uniform. He wasn't dressed out. It was like, no way. Like, no way this is happening today. Like right now, no way this is happening. And then Mike starts talking, saying all these really nice things about somebody. And I was like, no way. No way is this happening right now. And then he passes it to Travis. And Travis started saying some things that were a little more personal that might be me. And I'm like, no way. And then there's the belt, Cody Owens, come on out. And immediately, I broke into tears. Obviously, it's a super important thing and a very special moment in my life. I know you hear this a lot in the jiu-jitsu community, and it's beautiful to hear. And it is a cliche, but when people say jiu-jitsu saved my life, like I can confirm that. Like it did do that for me. At the time I got into jiu-jitsu, I wasn't like the best guy. I was running with mainly the wrong crowd. I told you I had a pain pill addiction, drugs, alcohol, partying. I was going down essentially the wrong path, doing the wrong things with the wrong people. And for me to find something, I came from a broken home. You heard me talk about that in my speech. I come from a broken home. My parents divorced when I was 13 years old, a really like influential, impactful age for me to need a father figure. And Travis, Jace, Jose, a few other people filled that void for me in martial arts. And being able to have someone that was so well respected and someone who had people look up to him and want to be like these people and strive to be like these people. That's what I had needed in my life. And, I'd screwed off for a few years, and then Courtney and I started our talking, and I'd always talked about jiu-jitsu, and she told me, look, if it's something that you want to do, you should do it. You should try it. You should get back into it. So started again, and the rest is history. I've been there ever since. 13 years later after that, you get the black belt. But for me to have all of my teammates there, to have all those black belts, 9 black belts that were all part of my journey, my growing up in jiu-jitsu, they were all there for me on that day, and to be there to celebrate my moment, it was a remarkable feeling. And to get my black belt from Travis, like I can tell a story that will hopefully summarize how important it was to me to get my black belt from Travis Took. My wife and I, many years ago, had an opportunity to move to Oregon, to move into a friend of ours' house. They were moving to a different home. We could move into their home, take it over, and run the Airbnb that was connected to it, kind of in the mother-in-law house. It was an Airbnb. That's all we had to do. I had a job guaranteed with the guy, Dwayne. Sarah, his wife, was going to show Courtney all the ins and outs to the Airbnb thing. We had a thing lined up. Job, place to live, business to run, everything. And I told Courtney, no, I don't want to leave where I'm training yet. I was still a purple belt at this time. I said, I don't want to leave. I don't want to go anywhere else and get a black belt from anyone else or have to figure out how to get back and train and cross train. I said, I want to be under this man's umbrella. He's done so much for me in my life already. He's taught me so many valuable lessons that he's still teaching me to this day. You know, I run the kids program over at his gym now, and working so closely and coaching side by side with him, like just last night on the mat together, coaching with him, you know, that is, I guess, what people don't realize in the big picture of jiu-jitsu. It's the reasons you start jiu-jitsu are never the reasons you continue to do jiu-jitsu, right? So for me to get my black belt from him, be a Team Took representative, potentially one day, you know, run a Team Took or a Team Torres affiliate gym, that's where I want to be. That's where my life is going toward, and everything we're trying to work towards is that potentially Jeremy and I maybe having Owens Brothers Jiu-Jitsu one day, you know, running our own academy. I think that would be a really cool thing to see come to life as well. So, you know, all these things are all hearsay. It's all talking right now, obviously. There's many things that would have to happen for all that to come in, but that was always the driving force for me, was making sure that I got my black belt from Travis. And to have Professor Mike, who has become my best friend, a great partner, a training partner, a great coach and mentor. I remember when he first got to the gym, I was one of like the first guys that, you know, started talking to him and became his buddy, and we were great training partners, and he would always jack me up, and I'm always like, man, how'd you do this to me? What were you doing here? You know, and we just clicked, you know, pretty quick. And I didn't start with him until a little bit later. Courtney and Jeremy started their jiu-jitsu journeys with Mike. They went up through him, and then eventually when Mike moved into the bigger locations closer to where we live, we all started training together, and I was back and forth like I am now still to Travis's and over to Mike's. But for both of those men to tie my belt on me at the same time, man, I mean, you were there. You saw that was a truly special moment for me. You know, you always have these images of what it's going to be like, and that was one image that I had burned into my brain that I wanted to happen. No matter what I say or who's there or what happens the day of, I want those two men to tie my black belt on me. And it happened, and I got a picture, and I'll frame it and cherish it forever.
That's amazing. Yeah, you're right. You never start jiu-jitsu and do it for the same and continue it for the same reasons. I remember when I started, I wanted to just fight. I was just like, I'm just going to do no gi, but I would jump in the gis, see what happens. I got to rank up in the gi.
Right.
And I was like, I don't have any intentions on doing this. And then, you know, I stopped, and life happened, and things switched that, you know, shit happened. Got back into it and was like, all right, still not a big fan of the gi stuff.
Right.
Finally got back into it like a third time, and I jumped in the gi, and I was like, I only trained gi for a long time. I was like, I kind of like this gi shit.
It's kind of nice,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
And then we moved, and I texted you, and I was like, hey, where do you train?
Yeah.
And you told me Torres
There we
Jiu-Jitsu.
go.
And I remember my first day, man, I'll never forgive you for this. I remember my first day, fucking no gi. It was in the afternoon, and I walked in I only had long sleeve rash guards. It was like July.
Right.
And so I only wore long
Burning
sleeve
up.
rash guards. Yeah. So I walked in, expected it's going to be like 75.
No, sir.
And I'm like, oh, shit, it's hot as fuck in here.
It's hot in our gym.
And I texted you. I was like, there's no AC in here? You're like, oh, yeah, it's grimy. I was like,
Yeah.
thanks, man.
We got a big-ass fan.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it.
That's it. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, those are good times. Man, I remember, I think it was after I got my purple belt. Travis told me a couple things that stuck with me forever. He whispered in my ear when he tied my purple belt on me. He said, you're halfway. You can't quit now. I was like, damn, I'm just as far to white belt as I am to black belt.
Right.
Like, you're right, dude.
Yeah.
But I remember we went out to eat afterwards. We're all chit-chatting, bullshitting, you know. telling stories, and he got to talking about something. And one thing that he said stuck with me. He said, jiu-jitsu is so much more than the moves you learn. And I was like, man, over time, that developed so much more, and I understand it even more now. Like, I've been doing jiu-jitsu for 13 plus years and been going to therapy for like the same amount of time. Didn't even know it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's so much more than the moves you learn. It's the people, man. It's the people. You find a good gym, a good family, a good culture, and a good vibe. I mean, our open mats are like the epitome of what our gym is like. That's a daily occurrence at our gym. If you've ever been to one of the open mats at Torres, that's what our classes are like. It's all chill, laid back, but we're working hard.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing, for me, making sure that everything meshes well. You train hard when you need to train hard. You chill when you need to chill. You drill when you need to drill. Like, we got it all at Torres, and that's a thing I'm very proud of.
I am as well. I'm very thankful that I found the gym and that we kept in contact, and you were able to introduce me to the gym as well, because it is like kind of the perfect atmosphere to not only learn jiu-jitsu, but also you're done training, you're sitting there and you're thinking like, man, I don't want to go home just yet.
Yeah.
I just want to chill.
I want to sit here and like talk a little shit,
people. Yeah.
tell a couple stories. Hey, what's your weekend like? What do you do for work? What? No way.
Yeah.
And those things are, I constantly learn stuff about our students all the time. I'm talking, I'm like, you do what? I'm a machinist too.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
dang, because we're there for one thing together. But I don't think, I'm not speaking for anyone's gym. Obviously, I haven't been to these gyms. I don't know, but everyone has a different background. Everyone has a different life, but we all come to this gym for the one thing. We're here for jiu-jitsu, but it's like you're also this other person with this whole other aspect of your life. I kind of give a shit about that too, Like, we're in this place all together doing this one thing, but like when you have a culture like we have, you grow that type of relationship with people where you care a little bit more about, hey, what's going on in your life? Like, hey, Drew, are you good? No, bro, like, hey, are you good? Like, I actually want to know, are you good? Not like, yeah, everything's good, doing great, cool, awesome, give you
see you later. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, cool. I guess he's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like things like that. No, we have those types of conversations, and I think this is probably widespread in the jiu-jitsu community. I think that people who do jiu-jitsu, it's the most humbling sport. Eddie Bravo said it's the only martial art where you could take another human being to the brink of death and let them decide.
Yeah.
That is a very humbling experience when you got to sit there and go, okay, I might pass out, and I don't know if I'm going to wake back up, or do I tap to fight another day? It's constantly a battle you have to do, and that humbles you very quickly. So you get to calm all that down. Over 13 years of doing this, I've calmed all that down, and I care about my training partners. I care about my teammates. I want to see people do well. I want to help try to guide people to get to the next level, get to the black belt or whatever belt they're trying to get to. I want to help guide that experience and do it in the most positive way, because you hear horror stories. You hear stories where people get hurt or people get manhandled, or there's all types of things we don't have to get into that happen at gyms. And it's unfortunate, but it's, every community probably deals with their fair share of issues, right? But I think having a long-standing gym with a long-standing reputation of a certain way is something that we can hold our head high on and know that we have a very reputable gym. No matter who comes in, who comes out, we have a very reputable gym, and we maintain that image. And
people leave happy.
Yeah, 100%. Like, hey, cool. I'm like, we've had many people have to move, and it's like when TJ and his family left, man, that was tough for the whole gym, man, because him and Janice, they're such great people, and then all their children were training there, and they were such an integral part of the team, the kids program there. They were just such a bright ray of sunshine all the time.
He was always so nice.
And we're like, oh, damn, man. You're going where? Japan?
We're like, hey, Team Chip to Japan,
man.
Like,
we're coming out there, So, and it's those things where oftentimes there might be just numbers, It's like, oh, cool, lost a student. Oh, another family's gone. We'll just move another one in. They were part of our family. We lost a piece of our family, but, still keep in touch and that type of thing, which happens all the time. But, that's the familial thing. I'm very big into the family. I'm very close with my family. What I do have left, I'm very close with. I will protect with every inch of my body. So the family aspect and building that type of atmosphere is very important to me.
Well, I definitely agree. I want to say thank you for coming on.
Yes, sir.
Today.
Thanks for having me, man.
It's been great having you. I've known you since you were a 3-stripe blue belt back in the Main Street days. Now I'm glad to see you're progressing, excelling, get the black belt. Catch Cody back in action March 25th.
24th, March 24th, Mexico City, Mexico, on
Yep.
UFC Fight Pass.
There we go. UFC Fight Pass, March 24th, Combat Jiu-Jitsu. I'm going to pass the mic over to you. Do you have any call-outs, shout-outs, plugs, anyone want to thank?
No, I mean,
Anything?
obviously, thank you for allowing me to come here and speak a little bit, and kind of announce my combat jiu-jitsu thing, I'm very grateful, and I guess I sit with a feeling of gratitude these days because I come from pretty rough upbringing, pretty, rough to get where I'm at. We all have our story. We all have our thing that makes us who we are, And for me to know that, there's people in my life who do know all the ins and outs and the details. And for me to be where I am in my life, doing the things I'm doing now, the 18, 19-year-old me would never believe it, So I sit with a emotion of gratitude, a feeling of gratitude, and I'm just appreciative of everything that comes my way, whether it's good or bad. A lot of good's been coming around lately, and I'm obviously very appreciative of that. But I also embrace the bad. We all have bad times. I think saw this after one of my wife's little shows. Courtney has watched these little doctor shows, whatever. But they say that life is like a heartbeat. It's in the ups and downs when you know everything is going okay. It's only when there's a flat line that there's a problem. And I think that makes perfect sense in life. You have to take the ebbs and the flows, the ups and downs, and know that every down that you have in your life is a teaching lesson. It's something that you're being taught so that you could be given the necessary tool to be prepared for whatever the next objective is, to be prepared for whatever the next battle is. And the shit comes for everybody. The timing is different, and what mask it wears is different, but the shit comes for everybody. So if we depend on our community, we depend on the people at our gyms, our family, or people around us, we communicate, and we can realize that we're all going through the shit. We're all in it together. It's just the timing that it happens is a little bit different. So if I can lean on you, or you can lean on me and tell you, hey, I'm going through this thing, and in my life, I have maybe gone through something similar. Now I can give you the tools that I used in that situation. I can give you 5 different tools and say the third one works for you. That's 2 more trials and tribulations you didn't have to endure in order to learn that lesson that you needed. So I think that's a very important tool that I think we should lean on our community. I'm a big proponent of our jiu-jitsu community. I think in the Houston area, we have an amazing group of people. There are so many coaches and professors throughout this Houston jiu-jitsu community that I am very pleased and honored to be friends and acquaintances with. And I think that if we can just open up a larger line of communication, that everybody could really help each other more than we ever think we possibly could. So I'll just leave it with that.
You heard it here first, folks. This has been the Met Mindset. I'm Drew Elder. I hope everyone has a great day.
This what the city been wanting. I know y'all patiently waiting. I do this shit in my sleep, so I had to get back to basics. Got the city tuned in, cause they know I'm going for greatness. They know I'm holding the crown, and they know I'm coming to take it, huh?